their aggressive tendencies and their desire to destroy America and Christianity. What can be done about that? Well, Aikman points out that this Christianization of China and the growth to 400 or 500 million Christian Chinese in the next quarter century is occurring at the same time as the technological revolution taking place in China, so that by the time that is mature, China will be a Christian nation. Thank you, Lord. There is in China right now a great spiritual movement, a fervor going on. It's entitled the Back to Jerusalem movement. It's a movement to complete the circular movement of the gospel around the world, to go all the way back to Jerusalem. Their plan in this great undertaking that is being led by the Protestant evangelical Chinese Christian churches is to send 100,000 Chinese missionaries to the Muslim world. Nothing faintly resembling that has ever happened before. And this will utterly, they say, disrupt the Muslim movement. There has never been a spiritual assault on Islam. Never. You see, even the Crusades of the 11th and 12th century were not spiritual crusades to convert the Muslims. They were crusades to take back territory, to take back the territory of the Holy Land, the holy places where Christ was crucified and buried, etc. But they weren't there to convert Muslims. There has never been such a crusade in 2,000 years. But I would say to Osama and company, the Chinese are coming. You better watch out, because they are very zealous in their Christianity over there. By the way, you probably know that Muslims will declare that they are eternally traumatized by the Crusades of the 11th to 12th century. Eternally traumatized, which means you can be forever offended, which is what so many Americans want to be today, offended by this, that, or the other. Well, they are eternally traumatized and offended by the fact that in 1100 there were these Crusades. But it's interesting. I wonder who could tell me about the first crusade. What was that like? Let's see, was that the Children's Crusade? Was that St. George? Which crusade was that? I wonder if anybody could tell me. You never, ever, ever hear about it. It was a crusade started by the Muslims as they came out of the sands of the desert and attacked Israel, Jordan, and all of those countries around there, which had been in the hands of Christians or Jews for many centuries. And the Crusades of the 11th and 12th century were simply efforts to get their own land back. I am eternally traumatized by that first crusade. Well, I'm not that easily offended, but I do believe that they have no right whatsoever to complain about someone wanting to take something back from them that they stole in the first place. The first crusade. By the way, Does anyone know what the Arabic word for that crusade was? Jihad. Does that sound familiar? That was the first jihad which took over the Holy Land and all the east end of the Mediterranean. But there is a movement coming. Think about it. The threats of China and the threats of militant Islam, with Chinese being converted by the millions and expected to be 400 or 500 million Chinese in the next quarter century, confronting the militant Islamics. There go both of the great threats facing our world today. Isn't God wonderful? And I remember 20 years or so ago thinking, how in the world are we ever going to solve this problem with the Soviet Union? And the whole thing collapsed from within. An incredible God that we have. So we have meaning for our life as it's described in the Bible, and that meaning is connected to our purpose. What is your meaning in life? What is your purpose for life? Without a purpose, your life has no meaning. Did you ever think about that? Unfortunately, many people's meaning is just to enjoy themselves. It's later than they think. It may be a whole lot later than some people think. But what can I do? A more sincere Christian might ask. I'm not a great pioneer missionary. I'm not a statesman. What could I possibly do? All I do is teach a few kids in a Sunday school class. What could that possibly do? Well, let me tell you about a man that taught a few kids in a Sunday school class. His name was Edward Kimball. It's conceivable you heard of him, but highly unlikely, I think. He taught a group of high school kids in Sunday school, and one day he decided that there was one of them that he felt really he needed to talk to personally, that he wasn't quite plugged in. He found out that he worked part-time in a shoe store after school, and he went to the shoe store and walked back and forth in front of that shoe store about 6 or 7 times before he could get up enough nerve to enter, because Edward Kimball was a shy man. Well, I know this is just a boy, but he was still afraid to talk to him. Finally, he got up the nerve. He went in. He asked for Kimball. He was back in the stacks, putting boxes of books on shelves, boxes of shoes, on shelves. And he went back there, found the lad, started talking with him. And after some discussion, he led the young man to Jesus Christ. Well, now that's 2 of them. Well, that second one was named Dwight L. Moody, who later became the most famous evangelist in the world in his time, right after the Civil War. He built the Moody Bible Institute. He built Moody Church, a great church up there. Out of Moody Bible Institute, thousands of missionaries were sent around the world. He also established the Moody Press, published many books, magazines there, a school in Massachusetts, and other things. Had an enormous impact. Traveled around the world. In England, one of the young men that he had a huge impact upon was a man by the name of F.B. Meyer, who became a great preacher and then an evangelist. And in one of his meetings, there was a man by the name of J. Wilbur Chapman,